Hey guys, how you doing? Coach here. And if you're on this, you are totally looking at getting your math GED done. And so that's what we're talking about today is what's actually on the math GED, what to expect, how to get through this thing, and really what are you in for? Because math GED is one of those tests that, man, math always gets tons of people. And if you're having to do this, everybody's got to, and sometimes it can take a few times to get through it. Don't sweat that, because coach is here now. You got me, and I'm going to make sure you can get through this, because we got a game plan. We're going to make it work, because there are actually some really good tricks. And unfortunately, I ain't going to lie, some teachers don't really know near as much what they need to do to get you through this, because there's some secrets that I'm going to tell you and fill you in on that not everybody necessarily wants you to know. But first off, let's talk about what is the GED test, what to expect, and kind of the overview of how it's all set up. First off, the math GED test is a thinking test. It is not a computation test. You are not memorizing formulas and performing tons and tons of analytical equations. Really, you're looking at figuring out stuff. This booklet I'm showing you right here is actually the booklet that you actually get to use during the test. The Pierce company who owns it, they don't want anybody to be able to write down stuff and take it with them or sneak it out. So you actually use a whiteboard. So you get these booklets. Some places may have them in single sheets. The people I work with typically have them in these nice little spiral bounds. So you've got 4 or 5 pages built in here. And so you can always ask for more. You can erase as you're going through. You'll also have your whiteboard markers to work with, and this is where you're going to do it. So at the beginning of your test, you're going to get one of these pads. You're going to get the markers. The other thing they're going to give you to start off is this guy, your new best friend, which some of you have probably seen. And if you haven't, you need to look at it now. This is the official GED math formula sheet, and it's got a ton of stuff on here. This is why I'm telling you this is not a memorization computation test, because these formulas that you use on the GED, they're giving to you. And as we go through each individual topic in our individual lessons, we'll look more at this. But on the sheet itself, see if we can get it up here and show you, we've got all of our geometry stuff like areas and perimeters and surface areas and volumes. We even have some information on our data analysis. And we even got our algebra section with a lot of our different algebra stuff. So a lot of things that you're going to need is right here. Now, but you'll notice it's not written normally. You got to be able to speak the language of math. It's like when your quarterback's out there, and Peyton Manning was always famous for saying, Omaha, Omaha, whenever he gets under center. Well, it's kind of the same thing. It's written in these codes. So you got to know what it means, like V equals LWH. Well, that means for volume, the V's volume, you take your length times your width times your height. Length times width times height. And we'll get more into that with each individual section. But here's the other thing. Most people will never turn this page over. Here's the formulas. Like, oh, that's what I need. They got the formulas. The other side gives you a calculator reference chart to help you remember if you're getting a little bit nervous or trying to remember, oh, how do I punch this in? How do I do it? This is some of the most common things you might use on your calculator. And I will tell you, some of the most best things is this mixed numbers for whenever you got to punch in these different fractions, or these powers and roots, like squaring numbers, cubing them, and so this is exponents. We'll use that more when we get into, but the calculator does amazing stuff. In fact, you're going to get this exact calculator. It's the TI-30XS. They come in gray or yellow. I happen to have yellow because I buy them by the big boxes, and so they typically come in yellow. But it's got a lot of stuff on here. It does a ton of things. And if you go on our website, the GED Help, the GED, the Fresh Start Academy that you're using for this, the next video on the page goes over super in depth all the cool stuff that you can do with this guy, because it does a ton of things. It's going to do your calculations. What it can't do is punch things in for you. You've got to know what to punch in. You got to know what button does which. And you're going to think, oh, the question's wanting this, so I got to punch in that. So, but as far as the actual calculations, like, you're not going to really have to do that. The calculator's going to calculate the stuff. You just got to know what to push in. All right, so you're going to use that. So let's look at how the math test breaks down. And you know what I really like about the math test? I know it gets some people, but the thing about math is math always has an answer. If you do the process, you get the answer. There's none of this, oh, what do you think the author meant by this? Or this makes you feel when you read it? I'm kind of a literal guy, so, reading's not as much my thing. So I much prefer this math stuff because you do the exact thing, you get the whole answer. So let's look at how the math test actually breaks down. Come on, marker. And yeah, coach is used to writing really fast during timeouts for the team, so I sometimes write a little bit messy. So first off, math test. You're getting 115 minutes. It's just under 2 hours for this test, okay? So that's a pretty good chunk of time, but it's all on one timer. And that one timer is going to cover both parts. So you got part 1 and part 2. Now, part 1, the biggest difference between these two is part 1 is the smaller section. It only has 5 questions. And you get no calculator. Because it's 5 questions, no calculator, and you have one timer, you have to budget your time on this guy. So part 2, it's bigger. We're talking usually about 41 questions. And this is where the lion's share of your test comes from, but this is where you get your calculator. A person can miss every single one of part 1, miss all of these questions, and still get a great score on the math GED test if they kick butt on part 2 with the calculator. That's why we are going to devote a lot of time to learning how to use our tools. All right. What does this mean? It means part 1 is roughly, I know it's not exact, but roughly it's 10%. It's roughly 10% of your test. And that means you want to budget about 15 minutes. You really don't want to go too much past this. If you're figuring out that last one, like, I really got it, pace yourself. Try not to go more than 15 minutes on this. Once you finish part 1 and you hit the submit button, that's it. Part 1's done, no going back. Now, between part 1 to part 2, there is a 3-minute break. You gotta go run to the bathroom, get a drink or something like that, and that 3-minute break does not count against your 115 minutes. It is separate. The proctor, whoever's giving you the test, will log you back in after that 3-minute break, and then you'll start part 2. Now, because it's one timer, if you take 30 minutes on this first section, well, you're not going to have near as much time for this second section. And by the same token, if you only take, 8 minutes for part 1, then you're going to have a little extra for this part 2. All right. So one timer. What are your questions going to look like? On both sections, your questions are going to be primarily multiple choice. That's where the bulk of your questions are. There may be some fill in the blank. Like they may, if your answer is 162, then you would actually, there would be a box that you might actually punch in the numbers 162. And on the test itself, they will give you instructions. There's also, occasionally you might have some drag and drop. This is popular on the section, and we'll get more into this here in a minute, but there's a part where you're likely going to see a question where it's put the numbers in order from least to greatest, and you might see drag and drop for something like that. And then sometimes there's like a point and click. Like if they want you to put something on a number line, or if they want you to drag a graph to make it adjust to the data. So these are the ways you're gonna see your questions. It really isn't too hard, guys. And I'm telling you, most of them is gonna be here. Most of them is gonna be A, B, C, D. Choose the one you want. Okay, so that's the breakdown of the test. Let's talk about actually taking the test. What are you going to do when you actually take the test? Well, a couple of strategies. You don't want to take too long on this first part, is the first big one. You want to save most of your time for the big section that's number 2. You also like to go, I know you've probably heard things like this before. You want to go with your gut instinct. Go with your gut. That means usually your first inclination a lot of times is right. Not all the time though. I tell my students, look, go with your gut, put that down, and then mark it. You can push this little button. One of the tools on the test itself is like this star button. There's actually, I'm sorry, it's not a star. It's a little flag. It's a little flag, and that means it will let you review it at the end. Now, once you submit part 1, you can only review those before you submit it. But really, it's only the 5 questions. So we want to get those done, do a good job, move on, because most of our time should be in part 2. So we can do our little flag. So now let's look at what are you going to do. So I would like you to try this little technique that I've worked with so many people in the past using this guy. And it is smiley face, straight face, frowny face. As I'm doing my test, if I might keep a little box off to the side here, and anytime I have one that I'm not too sure on, it's like, I think I got it, but I don't know. It's like I got it down to like a 50-50, like a 50-50 shot. I'm going to put that number here. So let's say like number 7, number 14, let's say 26, so on and so forth. Those are, I'm not sure, and I think I got them, but not real certain. And then I've got my frowny face. Frowny face is very rare. I only use the frowny face when I am totally lost. I got no clue. It's like, I don't know. Let's say number 28, 33, and I don't know, 16. I got no clue. I don't know what they're talking about. I didn't study that, and I'm totally lost. Well, I put them in my frowny face. Any numbers that were smiley face, don't touch them. They're good. Now, which one of these two do you think you should spend your time on at the end? When you finish your test, you got 10 minutes left, and you've marked these flag ones. Where are you going to spend your time? Straight face, frowny face. It ain't this one. This one. If you got some extra time, you want to go with the ones that you were kind of feeling it, like you kind of remembered some stuff, because now that you've gone through the whole test, maybe something jogged your memory. And so maybe now you can get a little bit better. You figure out, oh, now I remember that. Now, since you put your gut reaction for these the first time, let's say on question 7, I put A. I am not changing this unless I have a reason. If I look at 7 and I'm like, I think it's A, but it could be C. Maybe it's C, but I'm really feeling A. I'm not changing it to C unless I figure out the reason I should change it to C. Go with that gut unless you have a good reason to change it. Now, let's say you've gone through all these, and then you've got your questions here, 28, it was 33, and 16. Let's say all of these I've got no clue on. I just didn't study that. Maybe it was, I don't know, quadratic formula. Maybe it was some kind of algebra or something that I just was totally lost on. I got no clue. If I kind of have an idea, pick the one you think is right. But for the ones you have absolutely no clue on, pick all the same answer. If you got no clue and you're totally lost, pick an answer and go with it. So 28, 33, 16, I'm just going to do C for all of them. That is a last ditch technique only on the ones that you got no idea on. If you got a partial idea and you got 50-50, that's much better to go with that. And even if you just know, like, oh, hey, I know it's not this one, well, then you're down to at least a 33% chance. But on this one, the multiple choice, you got no clue. If you choose all the same answer, chances are you're going to get like one of these right. And that's just playing the statistics on it. That's a last-ditch effort test-taking strategy. All right, so now we've looked at the test. We know it's two parts. We got the time, we got breakdown. Let's look at what's on each section of the test. Now, I'm not going to teach you these topics. I'm only going to be explaining what's on each section. And we're actually going to start on, these are the biggies. Like you're going to Wendy's and you get the big bag. It's like, yeah, these are the big things. This is what most often occurs. Now, there's a lot of topics that can pop up on this test, and I'm not going to go over every single thing that can possibly be on there. The lessons on the website do that. This is just to show you the most commonly type of asked questions that are on there. So for the calculator section, and I'm starting there because it's the biggest one, word problems. And not just word problems, it's really about interpreting. It's, can you figure out what they want? These word problems are usually multi-step. Sometimes they'll even have graphics with these. So they might throw in some pictures, they might have a little chart. A lot of times they might have a little, like if the question's dealing with, going to the store and buying something, maybe you'll see some prices. If you're going, maybe this question's about going to a restaurant and wanting to figure out like tip and tax or something. So it might have prices or a menu on there. Okay. And then the other thing with word problems, more than you need. There's more info than you need to answer the question. So that's where the thought process, the word problem, the analytics, where I say this is a thinking test, you got to figure out what is it really asking. Because if you can figure out what it's really asking, you'll be able to identify what information you need and then get your answer. And a lot of times the extra info, you'll see it in the graphics. Like, let's say they give you a whole bunch of data on rainfall in different cities, but the question's really only asking about 2 different cities, even though they give you information for like 6. Well, that's extra info. All right, so word problems, big one. Next thing you're going to see, and this is probably the single biggest concept on the test, and that's algebra. Now, algebra, a lot of people see this and they get scared, but algebra is just a big fancy word for unknown. You're trying to figure out what the unknown is. And the reason people don't like it is because this is the part where they start adding in the letters. This is where we start adding in letters and numbers together. They use things like X, Y, Z. So you have something like 3x plus 2 equals 8. And you got to figure out what X is. The word algebra just means the unknown. In this case, the unknown is written with a letter. So don't freak out about that. When we get into our algebra section, we're going to teach you all that stuff. We're going to go over the common words you're going to see, like simplifying, like functions, like difference between solving and evaluating. Solving is where you actually find the answer, and evaluates where you well, I don't want to get too much into it. I'll get distracted because Coach does that sometimes. He likes to get into all that kind of stuff. All right, next big topic is, and here's the one, this is the one single biggest topic you're going to see more than anything else. It's got the most questions about, and that is, slope. The big old slope. Positive, negative, 0, and undefined. We'll get into that with slope, but the reason you see so many slope questions on the GED test is because it can be asked several different ways. There's algebraic ways where we have equations. There's graphical ways where we can have different lines. And so you can break these down a lot of different ways. We'll get into it, but if you end up studying one, if the night before the test and you're like, man, I just want to look over some stuff, do slope. Look over slope. Well, and remembering how to use your calculator. Knowing how to use your tools is great. Oh, and speaking of which, one thing I forgot to mention on the tools, when you're taking the test, you can actually change like the coloring on the page. So if your eyes are better, if you like looking at things where the background's black and the letters are white, you can change that instead of just a standard black on white kind of thing, or you can do a tan on white. So there are some different tools in there you can play around with, but I digress. Other topics that are on the test that are big on the calculator section, this is geometry. And on our formula sheet, here's all the stuff that's geometry on our formula sheet. So basically the first half of your formula sheet is all geometry stuff. So you don't have to memorize any geometry formulas. You just gotta know which one of these to use when they give you a problem. So they might, questions might be like finding surface area, finding perimeter. The other thing they really like in these geometry problems is they will give you weird shapes. Like, let me show you one they might do. Something like this. They might give you a shape like this and ask, what is the area of this shape? And then they'll give you information like this. Let's say this is 5, say this is 10, and then this is 2. You're like, well, wait a second, what about this? Well, length times width, 5, 10, that gives me this part here. Well, 2, that's 4, which means this diameter must be 6. And so you calculate. You can get the point. You calculate the different pieces, you put them together, and you find the whole surface area. So that's geometry. They really do like their weird shapes in there. And finally, the other section, other thing with calculators is sometimes you might see scaling. Scaling is where you have two shapes. Like let's, here's a favorite. A flagpole. Cast a shadow. Flagpole that's 10 feet tall, cast a shadow that's 15 feet long. There's a dude who cast a shadow that's, I don't know, 6 feet long. How tall is the dude? I don't mean to put a 2. I meant to put a question mark. There we go. So this is scaling where you use like the sizing of one to figure out the other one. And we will go into that. That's a whole section. All right, so that is our biggies for the calculators. Oh, I did forget one other big one for calculator. That is data analysis. This is mean, median, mode, range. And you know what? Here it is. A lot of that's on our formula sheet. It's giving us the mean and median. So you also have to learn the mode and range. And this is actually a cool one because it's one that's used a lot in real life, especially if you do any kind of business. Data analysis is a huge division of that. Underneath this, you also might see some probability, which is like, it's kind of like the gambling section. It's like I have 5 marbles, 3 reds, 2 blues. What's the odds of picking a red? And so you're going to get into that. And this also has a section called simple counting, which you're just looking at possible outcomes. So that's our data analysis section. Now let's look at our non-calculator. Now this one is not near as long because it's only 5 problems. And on this one, you're going to have 1 to 2 questions that are actual computations. Like you actually have to solve. Like they will give you a question where here's numbers, what's the answer? This is where you're going to see things like exponents and square roots. This is where you're going to see order of operations. And excuse my chicken scratch handwriting. In fact, order of operations is huge. This is what you probably learned is please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. We're going to look a little bit more at that. You will see this one also likes to do ordering numbers. Where they'll give you like fractions, decimals, and percents and ask you to put them in order least to greatest. And you might even see some absolute value. And number lines appear on here too. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to get one that's like more than 5 questions. You're like, Coach, you said I'm only going to have 5 questions on here, and there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9. No, you're going to see these things combined. For instance, absolute value, number lines, and ordering, these 3 will often go together. And they'll give you a couple of different numbers, positive, negatives, percents, and then they might put a number line. Instead of saying put them in order least to greatest, they might say put them on the number line, and you got to drag and drop your answer into the spot on the number line. So you're going to get all that. And these are the things we're going to be going into. That's the breakdown of the test. Does it seem like a lot? Yeah, it's 46 questions. There's a lot of different things on here, but at its heart, it's really just about thinking. It's really about figuring out what is it they're asking for. You're not memorizing stuff. And remember this too, we're looking for a good average high school level. This is not advanced calculus. This is not super trigonometry or something like that. This is math GED. They want to see, are you functional? Do you know the basic stuff and can get by in life? You want to get a 145. That's a passing score in the state of Virginia. If you're in a different state, stumbled across this, you may want to check your state to see what they take. But most all states are in this 145 range. Other than that, guys, at this point, I would go, the next video I would watch is the calculator. And because that's about learning your tool. You want to learn this tool well. And then once you know your tools, start going into the different lessons that we have on the site here. And Coach will take you through all those different things. Chunk and chew. Don't try to digest this all at once. If you want to see what you really need most, go do one of the practice tests at the end. It will take it, and then you can check it, and which ones you missed, well, then go do those lessons. Don't kill yourself learning everything all at once. Go get what you need, get this test done, and move on. This is not a 4-year course. This is designed to be a crash course, get you through and get you done. That's why I was telling you all these tricks, like with the picking all the same answer for the ones you have no clue on, or dedicating your extra time to the ones you were kind of sure on. All right, guys, you got this. Coach will see you in the next segment, but vaya con Dios, amigos.